Good, good morning, everyone. Happy Friday, and welcome to another episode of Tea and Coffee with Paula and.
Yay, and I'm still healing. I'm getting there. I'm getting there. So maybe next week we'll have no more hat. But good morning, everybody. Hope you're good. And it's been very interesting news day. There's a roller coaster that's in West Edmonton Mall. And it's what the last couple of days have been feeling like, certainly like a roller coaster. Your thoughts?
Yeah, here's the thing. It's important that our media reports truth, facts, and not bias and their opinion or what they would wish the facts and the truth to be.
It's a long way of saying they lied.
Yes, CBC lied. Surprise!
Anybody's socks still on? Mine are still on. I'm not surprised.
Surprise!
But yeah, we'll get into that for sure in a bit. But how about the Martin update? There has been a change since yesterday.
There has been we have a new diesel heater installed and it's been functioning very well. Thank you to Jason and myself. I helped to get it done yesterday evening.
It's kind of like a doctor's surgery with the wife helping out. Pass me this, grab me this, go get this. And she's excellent at it, especially when you're underneath and you can't move around. It's very handy.
Yes.
Scalpel, please. Give me some gauze. Let's get this done.
The one thing I would request would be a bit more clarification on get me the bits. Considering we have there's drill bits and then there's the other bits in the case. So that was the only thing I was like, which bits do you want?
Yes. A man knows.
Well, yeah,
a man knows because well, what is he doing next? Oh, he's going to try and get through that wood, the hole. You need a drill bit.
Yes, sure.
She's apprenticing right now, so we'll get her there. But she's an excellent helper. She's very patient, and we'll run back and forth to the shed 7, 8 times, or 6, 7, 6, 7 times, and help out. So thanks very much for your help.
You're very welcome. But that's my exercise. That's how you get your steps in. Go help your husband do some DIY stuff around the house.
And it worked out good. So now we set it up permanently. We can service it. We can get to it if we need to. You can add the fuel pretty easily.
Yeah.
And the exhaust heat is being collected by the heat pump, so we can actually keep that thing a little bit warmer throughout the colder days.
Yep. Yeah. It's all how we have that set up, because we had the question on where do we want the body of the diesel heater to be. And I said, well, aesthetically pleasing, it should be outside, so it's not on the inside. But whatever enables us to be as energy efficient as possible. I don't care if it needs to be hanging from the roof. Whatever needs to be done, and lo and behold, it needs to be outside. So that works out.
Yep. So it works good. So one of these days, some of you will come check out our little homestead, and you'll see these little diesel heaters all over the place. But it is minus 11 or so right now. So
yeah, we got a chilly snap. Well, we got a chilly couple of days, but it is winter. It is winter, so it's going to be minus teens for us, and then it warms up again to single digits. And so, yeah, over the last, I'd say 3 winters, it's been getting progressively better, or at least we're just getting used to it. The Alberta winters, they've been pretty good, and it looks like our minus 40 cold snap that comes every winter is again going to be in the new year. So I'm excited about that. At least that respite over Christmas, you get to enjoy it. The kids get to do some stuff and not be restricted on the temperature.
It toughens you up.
Yeah,
toughens you up, and we have to cuddle a little bit more at night and stay warm.
Oh no. I know. It's good. We're life on the homestead in winter, where this is our 5th one. So
c'est bon. Very good. Very good. There's some French. There's a little hint of what's coming. But we do have Mitch Sylvester confirmed. Happy to join us today, especially with the news that we're about to share with you, because it's a big news day yesterday for sure for Alberta, for independence, and not a great day for the CBC radio. I think it was called CBC radio or whatever. The French version here in Alberta. They did not do c'est bon.
No. They were not truthful. And that's unfortunate, because so many people rely upon them as being their main source of news. It's very disappointing.
And Alberta, or Danielle Smith's chief of staff, Rob Anderson, should be joining us. He was confirmed. He's got the link. I just didn't hear back from him, so we'll see what happens. But after yesterday, he may be very excited to come on and have some conversations. Yeah. And thanks to the not the chief of staff, the press secretary, Sam, for Danielle Smith, for working with me yesterday, and we'll get into those details. But yeah, a very responsive team over there. And Jason Stefan was on yesterday, the MLA. He was very pleased to be on, and he had some things to say, and some things he didn't say, and some things that raised eyebrows, and some things that answered a few questions, I guess.
Yeah, the chat was very spicy yesterday.
And we've also confirmed Rob Smith, the UCP president, will be on, I believe it's Wednesday.
Great.
And we're working on some more special guests for you. I think Mickey Ambry for Tuesday to come on the morning show to talk about the new bills that have come out and talk about the gun stuff, the castle law, other things. He was very excited to share with me at the AGM that something big was coming.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know how big or what big, but it came yesterday. So he may come on Tuesday, and it looks like we'll have Jeffrey Rath on Monday.
Good.
Because he's going back to court today, but kind of moot.
Yes.
Kind of moot. We'll get into that too.
Just wrapping up a few bits and pieces of paperwork.
The legal loose ends.
Yes.
The legal loose ends. So we'll get into that as well. And let me just double check to see if I got any more announcements for next week, because I am working hard to fill up next week for you and get some details for you. Oh, Thursday, Glenn Blackett from the JCCF, one of the lawyers there. I attended Regina Whittall's presentation at JCF yesterday. It's an amazing presentation. Basically 45 minutes of truth bombs like crazy. Mm-hmm. So looking forward to that.
And we don't expect anything less from Regina.
Yeah. Great. And she was on here sharing it, but she also made a presentation. So I'm going to try and get my hands on that presentation and share it. I've asked the JCCF for a copy. Mm-hmm. And we'll see if we can get that out to you. And nobody for Friday just yet. I might get Shane, what's his name now? He was the Getson. That's it. Thank you very much. I might get Shane Getson to come on. So what we're trying to do over this next couple months is get a lot of MLAs leadership from the UCP and government itself to come on the show. And this includes BC. I've reached out to some of the leadership out there in BC, especially the one BC party, and one of the front runners for the new leader of the BC Conservative Party. Reached out to him as well. But we're working on trying to get these people on the show to have these kind of conversations. So I hope you enjoy that.
Yeah, they need it, because also our viewers are not just from Alberta, they're across the country. And so bringing on different political leaders and representatives for all Canadians and Albertans would be important.
And the highlight here is, for me, is the BC government. If it turns conservative, they're going to be far more workable.
Yeah,
we'll be able to work with them a lot more than an NDP government. So we're going to be trying to keep an eye on that. The Conservative Party there isn't doing so well. They've had some fractures, they've had some issues, but the leader is now gone, and they're going to be doing a leadership race. It looks like there's 3 of them so far lining up. So we'll stay on top of that, because if it turns conservative over there, who knows? They may become sovereign as well. They may open up our prosperity. We may not have to go south. We may not have to worry about too many things. We'll see.
Yeah.
The hope is, if they go conservative, we may have a lot better relationship with them.
Interesting comment here from Wilf in YouTube. The new Liberal leader of BC Conservatives.
Well, no, hold on. We'll see. Okay, so one of the candidates that stepped forward is very much aligned with what we work on. So stood up against vaccine mandates, stood up for vaccine injury, is actually voted for the One BC motion. So it's actually aligning quite well to what we would want. The other two, not so much, but this one is who I reached out to. Seems like could be a much better fit for BC, at least something we haven't seen in a long time. So we'll keep an eye on that one.
Yeah, exactly. Give them a chance. But again, with any person running, you find out what are they running on, what's their platform, what do they stand for, and what do they want to bring to the people they're hoping to represent.
Right, and we had the MLA, the independent MLA, Jordan, can't get his last name in my head right now, but he came on and he was a BC Conservative, left the party out of principle because they were trying to whip and control him, but that was under that old leader. So now that that leader's gone, we may have him back as well to see what his thoughts are about it. But they may be making some big changes on the BC Conservatives, because you're right, with Wilf. Wilf. They're very liberal. They were very liberal. So let's see if they can change that.
And then in our locals chat, Dallas, LOL. Yes.
Dallas is also somebody we want to get on. So trying to get there a couple ways to get her on. It would be great if she took over the Conservative Party, because she is definitely the type of leadership that we like. But I wouldn't mind if she kept building that party and all the Conservatives moved there and continue with that. We'll see where that goes. But she's definitely lined up in the right direction. And that's why we're keeping an eye on BC, because there may be some big changes out there.
Yeah, that will positively affect them and the relationships with the other provinces like us.
Yep, and that's one of the things that we need to do. We want to get a Asian pipeline, a pipeline to Asia, and BC would be the shortest distance, like Jason said yesterday. And cooperation with that will be go a long way.
Yep. So, allow those tankers.
Absolutely, I would love to be at that port. The first tanker is being filled up. It'll be cool. All right, and speaking of that, in order for that to happen, we need support from our members. So go ahead and share this out, like, subscribe, hit that little bell. And what I'll do is I'll bring a bell to the port over there and ding, ding, ding to remind you guys that we love you all very much. And becoming a member is how we get support. We are not supported in any other way. So if you want to help us out there and get an extended episode, you get into the private chat. It gets very spicy.
Well, become a supporter. You can become a member for free through locals. However, you become a supporter, and that gives you access to the extended area.
You start with a membership.
Yeah.
And it is free on locals. And then you get the extended stuff. You'll be a supporter.
Yep.
Just click that button. And away you go. So appreciate all of that. But yeah, that's how we can get to the West Coast if we need to. We fuel up our car and get out there. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the news because there's quite a bit of it. And I want to make sure we're nice and ready for Mitch Sylvester and Rob Anderson. All right, so let's just have a fun one. Never forget, the whole world is a stage. And for the podcast listeners, what we're seeing here is a press conference where everybody was told to get their mask on because the cameras are turned on. There's a recording of them just scrambling to put this mask on for the camera. And the little meme says, remember that virus, which was only deadly when the cameras were on. It's just, sad to watch this. But this happened behind the scenes a lot. It was only when the people were watching that they wore it, and then they ripped it right off. We actually saw this in a White House press conference once. When it finished, the liberal media that would wear their mask just ripped it right off, thinking nothing was being recorded. And sure enough, somebody in the back had it recorded.
Yeah.
So we saw that. So during the press conference, it was like, why aren't you requiring masks? And then at the end, it was like, ripped it off because nobody wore it. It was just psyop. My post here was lights, camera, action. All the world is a stage. Never forget. Still working on this, folks. We don't want to forget about it at all. So Nadine Wellwood and Jason Stefan was on yesterday. Very, very good conversation. I think he did a good job not shying away from the questions, but he certainly was using more narrative or I wouldn't say propaganda, but more narrative-driven answers, whereas sometimes they weren't answers and sometimes they were not pleasant answers to some people. But applaud him for being there and sticking around for the whole time. And it was a very extended episode at the end. So if you were on our locals, there was quite a bit that we talked about.
We were like less than a minute to go before we had to end it because locals only goes for 2 hours.
Yep. So it was a full 2-hour episode if you're on locals. So enjoy that one. And you can still become a supporter and go check out that full episode if you have any interest in that. All right. So Wiretap, thank you very much. Former Liberal candidate Corina Trail threatens to kill former mayoral candidate Clareton, Ontario, Tom Digwall, and do bad things to his wife. But basically what Wiretap's highlighting here is when the media are going to start going after the left, the radical left, the anti-hate groups. They seem to ignore all of this kind of stuff. And what I highlighted here is I've received similar threats for covering the Kalistani protesters and the Alberta independence movement. It's getting bad out there. But I do want to remind everybody, but we don't need new hate laws either. Just need current laws enforced. So stay safe. And we have received these kind of threats, where it's a death against me and then bad things against the rest of my family. So this happens. But we don't need hate laws to protect ourselves. We just need the current laws enforced.
No kidding.
And the
right force to enforce it.
Yeah, and it seems like this Tom guy is getting some sort of attention for this, but he's also a previous police officer. So I don't know if he's getting special treatment, because when we bring this kind of stuff up, they don't take it seriously until somebody shows up, and at that point it may be too late for
some
them.
people.
But we'll see. We'll see if Canada starts to crack down using current laws to protect people when death threats are being applied. Marty up north, he's released some of the numbers from the UCP election, the council board election for the past weekend. It seems to be about 1,000 votes off. 1,000 votes less than expected. Because there's about 3,200 votes total,
Mm-hmm.
and there was 4,200 people there. And I find it hard to believe that 1 out of every 4 people there that went all the way there
did not
vote. So Marty has sent me the raw numbers, and I just got them. So thanks a lot, Marty, if you're listening. And I'm going to start crunching them too, because what I'm going to specifically look for is to see if the number of president, VP fundraising, secretary, VP comms votes is the same number. Because everybody that went there did those 4 votes, and then they had their region vote as well. But if those 4 votes are like way off the totals, what happened?
Yeah, exactly.
Because nobody would go in there and collect those 4 votes and then not vote one or only vote one or something like that. So we're going to crunch into the numbers without getting into details or the sources. A couple people came up to me after this election, said shenanigans were going on.
Mm-hmm.
And there was 4 recounts for Helen Holder as VP of fundraising.
Yeah.
4 recounts. That's what? Like, anyways, she ended up winning by 10.
Are you sure? Count again. Are you sure?
Well, I'll just give an example. The first count, she won by 120.
Mm-hmm.
And then she was down. And then she was up. And then finally she was up at 10. Like, it's very weird. And but anyways, numbers will assist us on this one. Maybe we get Regina to calculate and look at some of the stats on this. But we're going to take a closer look at these because I'm not saying there was shenanigans. There certainly were no Dominion machines. They were all hand counted. But let's take a little look. If there's a vast difference in the number of total votes for the 4 main positions, that would be weird because nobody would have well, maybe a couple people, but if it's a vast number, we're going to take a close look. So thank you very much for Marty. He's passing it on. I did want to highlight here. So good question, Marty, because he was saying what happened to 1,000 votes. People were lining up early. There was a consistent line till 2 p.m. And I know several people who came to vote and didn't stay. So that means people came out just for the purpose of voting.
Yeah.
So went out of their way to make sure they voted. I'm surprised anybody that was there wouldn't vote. It is certainly odd to think about a quarter of the people there didn't vote.
Yeah.
And Marty, can you DM me the numbers? Thanks, and he did. All right, so here we go. We're getting into the big stories here. There's 2 really big stories. The first one is so on the 3rd, so 2 nights ago, late, I received a couple phone calls about, and you were sitting right there listening to them, a couple phone calls about Danielle Smith on a French radio broadcast for the CBC saying that she was going to campaign against Alberta sovereignty. It was shocking. As you heard those phone calls, it was shocking, and people were pretty upset. And we also posted. We're like, because what I did is I got the English translated version of the post from the CBC, and sure enough, it said, "Let me pull up what it said at the time, because we'll be very clear about this." Yeah, there it is, right there. Danielle Smith will campaign against Alberta sovereignty in the event of a referendum. That's a very specific headline that says something. And really upset people. So one of the first things I did yesterday morning is I reached out to her team asking for comment because people were certainly upset. And what happened was immediately they're like, no, she didn't say that. Let me get back to you on this. So what then happened behind the scenes? And by the way, I'll give her team credit because this was released late on today's Friday, so Wednesday, in French, and very few people in Alberta speak French. And you had to translate it to English to see what the headline said. And as soon as I brought the English version to them, they moved quickly. And here, I'll read this to you because this post is a result of me reaching out to the press secretary yesterday. So exclusive update on the CBC story about Premier Danielle Smith and an independent referendum. Earlier this week, CBC Radio Canada published a headline stating that Premier Danielle Smith will campaign against Alberta sovereignty in the event of a referendum, end quote. That headline has since been revised, and the article has now been corrected. Radio Canada added the following correction notice, quote, correction, on December 4th, 2025, we amended this article to indicate that the Premier reaffirmed her support for Alberta sovereignty within the United Canada without explicitly stating which side she would take. End quote. After seeing the original headline, I contacted the Premier's office for clarification. Sam Blackett, press secretary of the Premier, provided the following statement. Quote, the Premier did not state she would actively campaign for the no side in a potential referendum on Alberta independence. The Premier was simply reiterating her support for Alberta sovereignty with a united Canada and that she believes Canada can work given the recent success of the Alberta-Ottawa Energy Agreement, end quote. Premier's office also provided the updated Radio Canada article here. So the headline now reads something like the 4 highlights of the end of the year of the 4 highlights for Premier Smith, something along those lines. Completely changed the headline. I didn't stop here, though, because the video that was released by CBC Radio was dubbed in French, but the Premier was speaking in English. So she wasn't speaking in French, which was another misinformation we received through all this kerfuffle. She actually was speaking in English, but it was French dubbed, and you couldn't hear what she was actually saying. The next thing I wanted to know was, did they mistranslate her? And I wanted to hear the English version of what she actually said, because maybe it's possible it was mistranslated and then the headline got created from that mistranslation. I pushed back, and her office said, well, the CBC, they're going to release it tomorrow, which would be today. And I said, no, I want it for the morning show. Let's get it to me, please.
Please and thank you.
So they did. So CBC released it last night, late, about 10:30. So we were ready for you today. So we'll get to that clip shortly. And nice to see Mitch is here. Nice to see you, buddy. The next piece of information, like while I was working on that story, going back and forth with her office, the next story came out. So thank you to Keith Wilson, who posted that and sent it to me. And then I took a look into it, confirmed it, read the bill, and sure enough, we have some huge breaking news. And our guest here today is going to be very pleased to be talking about this one. So breaking news, Alberta repeals charter barrier in citizen initiative law. APP's question will move forward. In a major legislative change, the Alberta government is repealing Section 2.4 of the Citizens Initiative Act, the clause that previously required all citizen initiative petitions and referendum questions to comply with the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, Section 1.235.1. This repeal fundamentally changes how initiative petitions may proceed in Alberta and Alberta Bill 14. Remember, this is draft. It's a first reading, passed. It should move quickly. But if you read it, that is exactly what this does. It repeals 2.4 and a lot of other things that assist citizens' initiative. So what is being removed? Section 2.4 stated, an initiative petition proposal must not contravene Section 1.235.1 of the Constitution Act 1982, end quote. Under Bill 14, the government completely repealed this charter compliance requirement, along with the related Section 2.1, which empowered the chief electoral officer to refer constitutional proposals to court. Why this matters? Albertans no longer have their petition questions pre-screened for charter compliance. The barrier that prevented certain types of petitions, including questions regarding Alberta's constitutional status, has been removed. Constitutional Review Authority has shifted away from the independent chief electoral officer and towards the minister, so that'll be Mickey Amory, who now determines what questions are sent to court. And he's not sending this one to court.
Yeah.
He was clear about that at the AGM. The door that is now open with Section 2.4 gone, Albertans may now propose initiative petitions that previously would have been blocked outright at the application stage. This includes referendum questions on Alberta's future within or outside of Canada. So what happens next? I contacted APP's CEO, Mitch Sylvester, and he's here, who just said, let's go, we're doing this. And he clarified that they will have to resubmit their application after the law passes in the coming weeks. However, there will be no court challenge, and the petition will move quickly forward to the signature stage. And then Mitch is going to be on today, and he is. I can see him right now. So, Mitch, we're going to be with you in about 5 minutes as we wrap up the news. But this is huge. So Bruce Party, ourselves, and many others said this was a self-imposed barrier that was slowing down and could stop the process. And we said many times, Danielle, if you are serious about letting people have the say, remove this, repeal this one, because it's standing in the way.
And as Will puts it, one step closer.
One massive step closer, Will, because the Indigenous people were intervening. They were trying to stop it themselves through this process in the court. That's now over.
Yeah.
And that also settles that. So there is going to be no First Nation intervention to stop this question from proceeding. They're going to have to pick up a pencil and vote like the rest of us, which is fine.
Yeah.
And I'm sure quite a few of them are going to vote for it because a sovereign and free, prosperous Alberta helps everybody.
Is going to help every Albertan.
Every Albertan, everybody that lives here, for sure. So we get back into more of this radio thing. So I went and posted on my previous post at CBC Lied. Here's a correction, no surprise. And here's where I'm trying to get to. This morning, I got a copy of the English version of the what she actually said without the French dubbed, and boom, absolutely. She's just repeating exactly the same thing she said all along, including to me at the AGM. So here's our headline. Proof, CBC's headline misrepresented Premier Smith's position. And what I did do is I got our French-speaking Nico Lagan to go check the French translation. The French translation was spot on.
Perfect.
So it was the headline maker who absolutely misrepresented and lied. And there should be no surprise there. But when it's in French to an Alberta audience and we are translating things in French to English and you dubbed over her actual words with a loud French dubbing, you really caused a lot of confusion, and I think that was completely intentional. So as I continue here, I've obtained the English version of what Premier Danielle Smith actually said in a Radio Canada interview, and it confirms the CBC's original headline was false. The Premier did not say she would campaign against Alberta sovereignty in the event of a referendum. Her answer in French matches exactly what she told me at the UCP AGM. She supports Alberta sovereignty within a united Canada, and she reiterated that position, nothing more. CBC now quietly updated its article and added a correction stating the Premier did not specifically say which side she would take. In fact, Premier also said Thomas Lusakic's petition is a referendum on separation, not sovereignty within Canada. In addition, with the repealing of Section 2.4 of the Citizens Initiative Act, proposed yesterday, the Premier has opened the door for the APP's binding constitutional question. Do you agree that the province of Alberta shall become a sovereign country and cease to be a province of Canada? Watch the clip yourself. The Premier's words speaks for themselves. So, liar, liar, pants on fire. CBC caused a lot of frustration quickly. And there we go. We've cleared it up.
The silver lining is they just expose themselves to how they manipulate the news and how they try to manipulate their readers and viewers.
Completely true, and expect a lot more of this as this heats up and we get closer to the referendum. The media is going to be used to lie to you about everything. They're going to tell pensioners your pensions is not secure anymore. You're at risk. You're going to starve and freeze. They're going to do a whole bunch of things like that. Don't believe it. In fact, if you follow CBC, do me a favor, unfollow.
Yeah.
It's going to save you a lot of mental anguish. A couple of things here. Actually, the last thing here. So Mark Carney, he did a post here. Canadians deserve to be safe in your communities. By the way, Carney, it was your government that caused this. Yeah, we caused a problem. We'll fix it. That's why we're hiring 1,000 more RCMP personnel and strengthening the criminal code to help violent and repeat offenders to help keep violent and repeat offenders off your streets.
Or
this is all just misleading for starters. You don't need to hire RCMP officers to strengthen the criminal code. And my highlight here is, sorry, you got to call a spade here. Mark Carney is a moron, and he thinks you are one as well. By definition, repeat offenders are already caught by the police. They are being put back on the streets by the courts. Adding 1,000 RCMP will do nothing to solve repeat offenders. By definition, they've been caught.
I completely I agree. Or you can just, instead of hiring more police, RCMP, you could just do a better job within the court system and keep these people.
Do both.
Yep.
But don't try and say, hey, I'm trying to fix a repeat offender issue by hiring cops. That's not how this works. They already caught them. Stop letting them go. All right, so there we go. We're caught up on the news, and we've got the man himself here and right on time. And let's go ahead and have a chat with a very happy, sitting on cloud nine, Mitch Sylvester. How are you doing, Mitch?
Good morning, guys. Yeah, I actually am happy. It was almost. I was very surprised by it yesterday when I had a reporter phone me, and I had no idea that this was coming out or anything about it. But now that I'm understanding that the consequence of this bill is going to allow us to move forward, which is what we thought originally, that we thought that once we submitted our question, we would be able to go out there and collect signatures and then bring it to the government and then eventually have a vote on it. So that's going to make as far as I'm concerned, the spirit of the Citizens Initiative Act, which is what we're doing, is like what it was supposed to be. It's now doing what it was intended to do originally, in my thought.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I spoke to Mickey Amory. Oh, and there's Rob Anderson right on. So let's bring him on. So I spoke to Mickey Amory at the AGM, and I asked him about this because 2.4 was basically in the way of getting the referendum question approved and moved forward. And he was kind of confident that that's not going to be a barrier. He didn't tell me he was removing it, that they'll be removing it. But he said, well, I know, I'm pretty sure the APP question is going to be going forward to a referendum. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And I thought, well, maybe he was expecting the court to approve it. That's as far as I went with it. And then he also said, and by the way, keep posted, there's going to be some big news coming up. And I thought it was about the guns because the gun news came out shortly after that.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't tell me. He didn't tell me. And good morning, Rob. Nice to see you.
Morning.
As well as we're kind of celebrating some of the work coming out of your Premier's office today when we're talking about Bill 14 and correcting the media of CBC who gave some misleading headlines over the last couple of days. So thanks a lot for being with us, Rob. But Mitch, just to kind of put a cap on that, nobody hinted, nobody said anything. And of course, a draft was in the works, but surprise, surprise. You're going to have to refile, though, right? You're going to have to refile after this law is passed?
Well, perhaps not. There was conversation last night that since we're already in the queue, and we may not have to refile. And the other thing is that moving forward, there was court today, and court is going to happen today. But we also thought that based on the court trial that we were having, that we had a very good chance of winning this and getting to this point, anyways. But I'm very happy to accept this. This is much easier for us, and throughout this whole process, nothing has ever been easy at all. So, not that I'm saying this is going to be, but what I'm saying is that at least it allows us to plan to move forward so that we can accomplish and set and accomplish our goals.
Excellent. Mm-hmm. And Rob, yeah, this kind of just hit the stage yesterday, so this was pretty important. And I invited you on to first introduce yourself to our audience, but also to talk about the MOU, to kind of dive into a little bit more to understand it, because there's some confusion or frustration around the MOU as well. So we got a full plate for you. So thanks a lot for joining us. You're the Chief of Staff for Danielle Smith, and let's go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, no, you introduced well. I'm just Chief of Staff for Premier Smith, and obviously glad to be on the show, and good to see your guests as well.
Excellent. Mm-hmm. So when Danielle, or the Premier, I'll try and be as formal as I can here. So when the Premier actually announced the MOU, your name came up as one of the people that was negotiating with Ottawa to get the MOU done and prepared. Can you kind of take us through that process with, not the whole thing, of course, but how involved were you with Ottawa? Was it a difficult process? Did you have to twist an arm or two? How did that look like to you?
Well, I mean, obviously, it was really important to the Premier and to, the individuals on the Alberta side of things to move our economy forward and get investment flowing back into this province. And obviously, a couple of the main, the biggest pieces of that MOU are the removal of the emissions cap and the suspension of the clean electricity regulations. And those two pieces were really holding up, I would say, easily tens of billions with a B of dollars in investment, and everything from AI data centers to oil sands expansions to increase pipeline capacity going to the south, to the United States. All those projects are being held up because of those two laws. And so to get them removed was obviously a huge priority. Happy to see that. And then, of course, the longer term project, which is to get 1.4 million barrels of Alberta bitumen to the West Coast. That's obviously very important because it affects the price of the differential that we can sell our oil to the Americans for, which greatly affects its value, of course, for Albertans, and the royalties that we collect to provide public services. And that project is going to be longer term. There's no doubt about it. We have to submit the project, the application to the project office by the end of June 2026 here. And that will outline, of course, the route and the port and the costing and all of those different things. And then it goes into the major projects office, and God willing, it gets approved over that next little bit. And once it's approved, we expect there to be multiple proponents wanting to be involved in building.
So with the emission caps and the two law you just listed there, have they actually been repealed or have they been paused at this stage? Like, could they come back if Carney chooses to?
Well, I think that's Prime Minister Carney, of course, is the head of the government, so the government of Canada can do whatever it wants to do, and then we would have to take steps in turn, but in response. But the Premier has made it very clear she wants to move forward to try to do everything that she can to get this economy rolling, to roll back the 9 bad laws, as she says, to get some pipelines built so that our most valuable asset can be exported. And in order to do that, there has to be a reset of the relationship. And in order to do that, from the disaster that was the Justin Trudeau years, both parties had to show a little good faith. Now, it's one thing to show good faith to have a first step, but you have to trust and verify along the way. And you can't just obviously believe that everything is going to go, well. You have to make sure that every step is followed and hold their feet to the fire to follow and carry out their end of the bargain. So that's what the Premier said she's going to do. We're going to try to make this work. There's just so many jobs and livelihoods and futures depend on it. And, as Reagan said, and she said in her speech, trust but verify along the way.
Okay, so fair enough. And Mitch, I'll come right to you in a second, because the next question I have is about the carbon tax, the carbon capture, and then the net zero 2030. These are all things that, or is it 2050? 2050. These are all things that are part of the MOU that Alberta is going to concede to and work with Ottawa on. Rob, do you think these add to the cost of the industry and the cost per barrel because we're under, federal control on those 3 things?
I don't think there's any doubt that a carbon price, an industrial carbon price, does add cost to the barrel, to every barrel of oil, and so obviously we've got some very strong feelings on the federal side that we need to address CO2 emissions, and that's part of the agreement, that's part of the bargain, that's part of the so-called cost of doing business. The key is that industry on a long-term basis, the industry, the players that actually pay the carbon price, and there's about 75 companies that have to pay the industrial carbon tax because they're above a certain threshold of emissions. Everyone else on it is they're voluntarily, but they could come off if they want. You have to remember that they are over the moon about the MOU, even though there is this carbon price. And the reason is because they believe that obviously we've agreed to the feds, there's going to be a stretching of it so that we're not piling up a 170 per ton carbon price by 2030, which is just ridiculous and completely unaffordable. So that we can stretch the timeline out, make sure that industry has the opportunity to make the changes that they need to their infrastructure and so forth and their projects, so that they can abide by this price and reduce their overall emissions. So they're happy about it. Obviously, there's a lot more negotiation to do on what that timeline is. If it's too steep, if it's too fast, then it makes us completely uncompetitive with the United States. So there's a competitiveness aspect. In addition to that environmental aspect that the federal government's very concerned with.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that, Rob. It's very helpful. So Mitch, in the Value of Freedom, the document that you guys released about what it would look like under an independent Alberta when it comes to things like this, Is this kind of what we're highlighting at this stage, that there's an overhead to the federal government and they make us sometimes market incompatible or less competitive? Can you kind of touch on the value of freedom and the perspective of an independent Alberta if we didn't have this overhead?
As related to the MOU?
In general, if we didn't have the federal overhead like carbon tax, carbon capture, et cetera, what the value?
We're projecting somewhere between a $35 to $50 billion surplus every year. And as far as we're concerned, the MOU is going to add $6 to $10 a barrel to the cost of Alberta oil and make us totally unproductive. Not unproductive, but take us right out of competition. We will not be able to sell our oil because the cost of uplift is going to be so high. So the whole idea with this memorandum of understanding and continuing to pander to social licensing versus environmental stuff, which should not ever be an issue in Alberta, is never going to get us where we want to go.
Okay, and also, as Rob put it, it's the cost of doing business. So that's what I'm kind of highlighting here. So if there wasn't that cost of doing business with Ottawa, we certainly would be far more competitive on an international stage with our products. Would you agree with that, Mitch?
And we're talking there's another path. I mean, we have to be seriously negotiating with Ottawa. And, we're repeating the same kind of things that happened in the 80s with the National Energy Project. This is just National Energy Project 2.0, what's happening here. And Lougheed did the same thing when he negotiated. He said independence is off the table. Well, thank you to the UCP. They have now just sent the message to Ottawa that independence is not off the table. Maybe you should come back with a better deal.
Okay, so fair enough. So now, Rob, as you're negotiating this, it's not easy. I can understand that. There's an agenda for Ottawa when it comes to the green and climate side of things, and they're still pushing that, because one of the things that Carney said right after the signing with Premier Smith was we have a 6-fold increase in the industrial carbon tax, and that's was the headlines right after that. Like, he didn't even leave Calgary before he said that. So what are your thoughts there? Like, that wasn't helpful. I don't think that was helpful when it came to trying to explain the MOU. It really caused a lot of people to see the MOU as a large concession to Ottawa. What were your thoughts when you said that? And what's the reality of it? Are we going to be seeing a 6 times fold increase right away?
No, I mean that there's certainly a negotiation to be done here on how this is all ultimately going to look, and we're going to be consulting with those 75 projects, those industry players that are most affected by this. And of course, remember, we're talking about the industrial carbon price. We're not talking about the consumer carbon price. And the industrial carbon price has been, I believe it has been charged since 2007 in Alberta. It started, I believe, under Premier Stelmach. So this is not a new thing, but it's very important that it's set at the right level and with industry input. Some of the changes we made last year, or earlier this year, I should say, to the way the carbon price works is, before if you were above a certain threshold, you would pay a certain amount, and that would come to the government, who would invest it in different programs and things. What we've added is a recycling element, so that the companies themselves get to keep the money that they pay as a carbon levy, and they get to keep it to invest in their own projects. Maybe that's using carbon dioxide to pump into the ground so that they can get more enhanced oil recovery from a well, for example. And perhaps it's the Pathways project. But one of the big changes we've made is allowing these companies to keep the levy and invest it in the way that they feel is most productive to them. So, I mean, there's going to be give and take in any negotiation. And, we're going to be making sure along the way that our industry doesn't feel that they are being set at a rate with regards to carbon levy that makes them uncompetitive, or makes them, more uncompetitive than they need in order to flourish. So it's a delicate balancing act. I mean, there's no doubt about that, but we're obviously going to work with the industry to do the best we can with it. And just one piece, I would say the one difference from, say the NEP days on this one is that, Alberta worked very hard in this MOU and in past agreements, even when Justin Trudeau was in power, to keep the levy here in Alberta, because as you know, if you don't have one here, then the feds get to set the price and get to keep the revenue that comes from that tax. That was declared by the Supreme Court of Canada in the carbon tax decision. So as a province, we made a decision, a long time ago, that we were going to keep that revenue here in Alberta, keep those dollars here, because the last thing we needed was for those dollars to go to Ottawa. So just some context on that.
Okay, so fair enough. Now let's jump into the carbon capture side of things, because what you laid out there was the industry can take the levy and then go and use it in things like carbon capture, or the output of carbon capture, which would be used in capturing more oil. Now, are you familiar with the results in Saskatchewan when it came to their carbon capture program? They weren't able to spin up to full production. They got a fraction of what they thought they would be able to do. And part of their problem was there was no market, or a very small market, for the product of carbon capture. Have you guys looked into that? Because you seem really optimistic that Pathways is going to hit its targets and it's going to be successful.
We've left that mostly to industry to figure out for us. I mean, the Pathways project is not a government of Alberta design project. It's a project that's been designed with 6 of the most successful oil and gas countries or oil and gas companies in the world, and they've been working together. I mean, these are things: Cenovus, Suncor, Syncrude, etc., CNRL, Imperial. I mean, these are these are very sophisticated companies with very large R&D divisions, and the last thing I think they want is the government of Alberta running around trying to design this thing. So we've left that to them. It's their project, and I'm going to have to put my faith in private industry to make sure that it works the way that they want it to.
Yeah, and the pushback that we get on that one is the subsidies from Canadian taxpayers and Alberta. So some of the carbon tax, from my understanding, is going to be used for the carbon capture program. I think 20 billion or 16 billion is what they're expecting it's going to cost. But how much of that is coming from taxpayers in Alberta, from your understanding?
Well, there's obviously the recycling that we talked. So most of it will come from themselves; they'll pay for it. But there's the federal government has a investment tax credit that they have created in their one of their most recent budgets to assist with that. And then Alberta has that covers, it's a pretty substantive tax credit. So it's interesting to have money actually flowing back from the federal government to Alberta for a project, which is kind of a nice change. And then the Alberta tax incentive program, it's called ASIP, and it's specifically for carbon capture, utilization, and storage infrastructure, and that's a 12.5% tax credit that is paid out to the company after they've completed the capital project.
Okay, so I can see how from the company side, the industry side, there's a bit of a circle of the funds going around and they can get it back. But when they have to have higher costs, those costs trickle down to the consumer. So even though it's not called a consumer carbon tax, in the end, consumers pay. It's like a hidden tax, because the price of everything doesn't go up, because the company's not like just eating it. They're going to pass it on for the consumer in the end. So Mitch, when we're talking about things like this, how do you feel? Let's just talk about an independent Alberta, using taxpayer funds, whether it's credits, whether it's a program or a levy, using taxpayer funds to assist and prop up an industry, even if it's a new industry like carbon capture.
Well, we're already at 43 to 45% tax rate for individual Albertans. Adding another tax on top of that is going to further make that number larger. And I didn't understand up until a second ago that we're going to give oil companies credits on carbon capture. So they were supposed to pay this industrial tax to the province, from what I understand. So that money would go into provincial coffers for them to spend on provincial things. But now if you're giving them a credit, then the taxpayer is indirectly going to pay for it through that credit, because that money will not go to general revenue, unless I'm mistaken. And that's just what I had just understood from the explanation.
Sorry, I didn't hear your question.
So his question is about if it's staying within the industry, it's not going into the provincial coffers to be used on whatever the province needs. It still becomes a tax to Albertans because the cost of everything goes up, but the money doesn't end up in the provincial coffers. Can you clarify that?
Well, I mean, it is a tax credit. Mitch is not wrong. I mean, that is a tax that's paid. That incentive program is paid from Alberta General Revenue. So he's not wrong on that at all. We receive about it depends on the year, obviously. Oil depends on oil and gas prices, but we receive between 15 and $20 billion a year from royalties from oil and natural gas. And the Premier's stated goal and objective, and something that she's making tremendous progress on, this government is doubling that capacity to 8 million barrels, our current capacity, 8 million barrels by 2035. In order to do that, you need to build more pipe, and you need to fill that pipe. And in order to get to a place where we can, because that would mean, just so you know, at today's prices, that means we'd be collecting anywhere from $30 to $40 billion in royalties. You can't get there unless you get the emissions cap off, and you can't get there if you don't get the clean electricity regs off, and you can't get there if you don't, if you're not able to move your oil and gas to other provinces and to other markets. It can't just be the United States. You have to diversify your markets. The Asian market's massive, and it's even bigger than the United States. We should be participating in it in a big way because oil is going to be around for a long time. So the reason these companies are agreeable to pay this carbon tax, and the reason why Alberta is investing in this, is because if it means building a project that is going to ensure that we can double our capacity, because we're going to be able to move our oil to the east through Canada, to Ontario and beyond, to potentially Hudson's Bay, to the west coast through BC, under this MOU, for example, and then of course south. In order to do that, you have to make trade-offs, and the investment of ASIP is, quite frankly, a spit in the bucket compared to the tens of billions in new oil royalties from these new pipeline projects that are only going to be possible under this government, and I would say also under a lot of the provincial governments that we're beside in this country, if we have invested in the carbon capture and storage project that we've been talking about. So it's a cost of doing business, there's no doubt, but the upside for Albertans is massive, and so that's why this government's proceeding with it.
Can I make a comment, guys?
I was coming to you next, Mitch. Yeah, so the hope here is the prosperity in the future. You're keeping an eye on the prize, and you're almost willing to work with whatever you need to do, the cost of doing business to get there. Is that kind of the summary there, Rob?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just
Mitch,
also doing business. Yeah.
Okay, Mitch.
It seems
you're a businessman, you know this.
It seems to me that you're making a very good case for Alberta independence, so that we can get away from all these federal regulations that are costing us a fortune, which is exactly what we're saying. So there is another path, and it's very clear. Let's get away from all these federal regulations and make our own rules.
Yeah, so we're going to jump into that portion of the conversation shortly, because the last piece I want to talk about is the BC agreement and First Nations agreement. So the word veto is not used in the MOU, fine. But inside the MOU, there does have to be cooperation with BC, First Nations, and BC and Alberta. And Carney himself said in the Parliament, it has to be an agreement by them. So he's basically laid out the conditions of a veto. So if there is no agreement, it's going to stop at the border, right? So what is your take on that? Because Danielle was also or Premier Smith was also asked in the press conference, will Ottawa use the notwithstanding clause to force it through to BC? And she said, I don't think we'll need to. So what are your thoughts about there with the cooperation with BC First Nations and Alberta First Nations?
Well, I mean, obviously, it's like anything else. Like you have to work within the rules of the country that you're in, and our nation has a constitution, and the constitution is very clear that when it comes to cross-border projects and projects off the coast, It's not the British Columbian government that has the right to make the decision of whether it proceeds ultimately. And it's not the Alberta government. It's the federal government. The federal government has that power under our constitution. The notwithstanding clause doesn't apply in this situation. That's for the Charter of Rights. It's different. But the federal government absolutely has the right to make this project go forward. Now, they've been very clear in the MOU that we need to engage and do the consultation process that everyone else has to do when they build a large project like this with First Nations, because obviously the pipeline is going to go over a lot of First Nations lands, and there's effects, of course, at the port. Now, there's a reason why the word veto doesn't appear in the MOU from Alberta's perspective, and politics are politics. There, I don't know why certain people say certain things in question period, or why they say certain things in French, or all I can do and all the government of Alberta can do is negotiate an agreement and abide by the terms that are written down on the paper. What people say off the cuff in question period is what it is. But I think that from our perspective, we're going to keep our end of the bargain that's written down on paper. And we expect the federal government to do the same. And that means upholding the Constitution. And we're going to consult both with British Columbia as well as First Nations. We're going to make sure that that the First Nations are co-owners in this pipeline project, so they have an equity stake. Again, we think that's just a smart way of doing business going forward, because there's not just this pipeline. There's going to be many pipelines in the future, and we want to make sure that we have partnership, rather than resistance on those projects. So it doesn't say veto in there for a reason, and we'll work with British Columbians and First Nations to move this project forward. I just say too, here's the thing, we can all, I co-authored obviously a document called the Free Alberta Strategy several years ago. And I just say that there's no such thing as a perfect country. It doesn't exist. There's always going to be these internal battles over jurisdiction and trying to move things over state lines or provincial lines and so forth. It is no matter how you slice it, it's an incredible gamble to seek independence for the province of Alberta and cut ourselves off from a country that has any coastline. Now, is there a way around that? Eventually, through negotiation and through international law? Obviously, but the risks are very high. It's not just we form a country and all of our problems are solved. In fact, the problems could get even more intense for a long period of time. To say that there's not a risk is just not true. It's a huge risk. So what people have to balance, I think, when they're talking about, do we have an independent Alberta or do we try to make Canada work? I think for the Premier, and I'd say for the government, is the upside to trying to make Canada work, even if there is some cost of doing business, outweighs the downside of cutting ourselves off from Canada. And who knows what the government is in the United States in 4 years or 8 years with regards to that. So just trying to give you an idea of some other perspective of conservatives that are certainly pro Alberta firsters, but still look at it and say, man, the risk associated with independence is just far higher than trying to work with the country that we have to make it work effectively.
Okay, so that's a fair assessment because the risk is unknown, but just like all risk, it's unknown. Yep. But if prosperity, and I'm sure Mitch is going to counter on this one with, if we had the regulations and the taxes and all these other costs out of the picture, we can still negotiate. Well, we would still have to negotiate with BC, but from a different perspective and a different position of financial abilities, like we could pay more. Anyways, Mitch, I'm not going to speak for you on that one. What are your thoughts? Because certainly there's risk in everything. There's even risk in staying in Canada with a local government.
The biggest problem that I'm seeing with staying in Canada is the government of Canada is absolutely sabotaging our industry, and that's a real thing. And that's come from our premier. That's common knowledge, The other thing is that, and that's unprecedented in my life. Never before would I have ever thought that government would sabotage industry, their biggest industry, continue to borrow unlimited amounts of money, and then sabotage the engine that's paying for it. I don't understand how that's possibly sustainable, because that is a major problem, and absolutely, completely disregard anything to do with Alberta people, even in the middle of a negotiation like this, where the whole rest of the country gets absolutely this, and absolutely snub Alberta and our premier. They have no will to work with Alberta. So I don't think the risks are as big as what you're saying. As far as being landlocked is concerned, we're already landlocked. I mean, we're more locked in by federal policy than we are by anything else. And Northern Gateway had 80 to 90% approval by Aboriginal bands, and it's still not passed. And you're sounding like, we're going to work with Aboriginals. Well, that's already all been done. All the bands along the entire route of that Northern Pipeline were already in favor of that. And a small group of bands down in southern BC shut that whole thing down. So what I'm saying to you is the appetite to work with these people would be there if you could actually work with them. We're understanding that there's billions and billions and billions of dollars missing, and that's the biggest problem. We're working with a group of people that have no honor, and we absolutely have to change the system. I don't think the risk of leaving is even close to the risk of staying, and that's exactly our position, and that's why we're working so hard to achieve this.
Okay, so Rob, as we move over to the next part of this conversation, which will be Bill 14 and some of the roads that are open for the question of independence, the three things that come to my mind that Danielle has conceded is the 9 bad laws. These are things that she believes is not good for Alberta, so we all agree with that. Getting on the major projects list was one of her goals before the Grey Cup. That didn't succeed yet. Maybe by Canada Day next year, there might be a proposal in, maybe it will be approved, et cetera, but we're not on the list yet. And we absolutely have this MOU, which has upset a few Albertans. And it seems like these are all admissions from Premier's office that these are difficult things to have to work with in order to stay within United Canada. But I think it's pretty clear to a lot of people the relationship is rocky. Let's just put it that way. Just yesterday, the Bill 14 hit the floor first reading, which removes the requirement to make sure it doesn't contravene the charter. And sorry, we got some feedback there. And it is going to remove the requirement for, like Mitch's question, to go through the courts now. So clearly, the Premier's office is signaling, at least, that she wants citizens to make this decision, not the government. So can you confirm that is the intention there, that Bill 14 is meant to open the door for citizens to go ahead and ask and make this decision?
Yeah, the Justice Minister was really clear in his comments yesterday. This legislation, the citizen initiative legislation, is supposed to be permissive. It's supposed to allow citizens to gather a substantial amount of signatures. It's not easy, as I'm sure people involved in the process are going to find out, to gather 177,000 signatures. I believe it's 120 days. There has to be a real good base of support for something to achieve that. So I think we wanted to make sure that it was clear that we want people, regular citizens, to not have to go through court processes or get tied up in court, et cetera, trying to justify to a judge or to the chief electoral officer why their question should be allowed to just be put on a petition. So that's one of the pieces there, and it doesn't matter whether in government you agree with the question or not. I mean, how many times does this premier have to say how important protecting free speech, freedom of belief, et cetera. That is very important to her and very important to the caucus and this government, and important to the party that she represents and leads, to the party membership. Mitch would know this. How many times have resolutions been passed at the AGM respecting, protections of people's rights to express themselves and their beliefs and so forth. So it doesn't matter whether the government agrees or not with any one question. Personally, I think direct democracy is a beautiful thing, And if folks can get the requisite signatures on this or others, I'm sure there'll be other petitions on other subjects. If they can get those signatures, then, let Albertans decide whether that idea or that direction is the right one. And, I think that's not something people should be afraid of. Albertans have good judgment. They'll make a good decision when a question's put before them in a referendum.
Yeah, the same faith. So, Mitch, when I asked Danielle Smith this question at the AGM during the presser, if there was a new mandate for independence, a successful referendum, would she make that her mandate? What she listed off were all the barriers to that. And the first one she listed off was the court challenge. That's now been removed. So the next, it's like basically with the ball's in your court, Mitch. Are you prepared to collect those 177,000 signatures and get this moving within 120 days?
We're absolutely excited. We're absolutely excited. I think we were kind of told that this was going to happen with the lowering of the threshold and then get that going, and then we saw the loophole that was in there, and we've been dealing with that. I think we would have successfully dealt with that, but now now everybody's going to be happy as far as I'm concerned. We get the opportunity to pose our question. We get the opportunity to collect our signatures. Albertans will have a say. And you know what? When it all shakes out, it's going to be the will of the people, and everybody's going to be happy because of it. Everybody's going to have a fair chance at solving this problem. And, honestly, the UCP can basically stay right out of it and just referee. And I think that's going to be its role. And I believe that's what it should be anyways. So allow us to do our work, and we'll do our best to succeed based on what we believe is correct. And you know what? The other side can do the same. I really believe this is nonpartisan. I really believe this will appeal to everybody in Alberta, given once they understand the facts.
Can you share with us some of the numbers that you have already, like how many volunteers, how many people that are ready to go, to kind of gauge whether or not you have a success here?
Well, we have 250,000 people that are ready to sign this. We have 20,000 volunteers. We have thousands of canvassers trained. We've got people in every CA. We've got
Oh, he's coming back. He's coming back. Okay, so Rob, as we're waiting for Mitch to get back there, what I do like what Mitch is saying there is it's not partisan, government's not involved, so your thumbs are not on the scale either way at this stage. And one of the things we had to clarify over the last 24 hours was the CBC headline en français, which said that the Premier Smith was going to campaign against an Alberta referendum for sovereignty. That's been clarified and cleared up now. She never said that at all. She actually maintained her United Canada stance with sovereign Alberta. How important is it for you and the Premier's office to kind of stay out of this process, kind of just leave it to the citizens at this stage?
Well, I mean, I think it has to be an impartial process for sure. I mean, the integrity, you need the integrity of the ballot, and it's got to make sure that people have a fair chance to express themselves in any kind of petition gathering, and then in any kind of referendum. And so yeah, it's very important to ensure that process. That said, let's be clear. I mean, the Premier's been on the record, I don't know, 1,000 times saying that she supports a sovereign Alberta within a united Canada. That's her position. It's also the position of the vast majority of caucus members. So, I mean, we negotiated this MOU because this caucus and led by this leader want to lead Canada to a place where it can work, and to show that it can work and that it can really benefit our province as well as the entire country. So that's important. So we're going to, obviously stick to that work. She's determined to get the job done for Albertans on that. And, but, obviously, it's a referendum process. It's not a general election. So I'm sure she, along with caucus members, will state their views on the issue. But, that's their right, like every other Albertan, to express their view on it. And just so I have 5 minutes to my next meeting, Jason, so I don't want to don't want to just disappear on you, but if you have a couple more things, I'd be happy to talk about it.
You've been excellent for your time, so I appreciate that. So one thing that Premier Smith was clear on was she did not run on independence when she ran for the leadership of the UCP party or the general election. She ran on a sovereign Alberta inside of United Canada, and that's her mandate. And she's been very clear, and by the way, very firm on keeping that mandate. So that's kind of cool. But she also said, if you give me a new mandate, whether it's a referendum or an election, she will go ahead and represent that mandate as well. So she's clear when she says, give me a mandate and I'll run with it. And I've been very pleased that she's been firm, even with the winds changing and a lot of people kind of changing their opinion on sovereign Alberta within United Canada. If it comes back, and I know we're hypothetical here at this stage, maybe there's like an MOU I can sign with you. If it comes back as a yes in a strong, clear majority and the Clarity Act kicks in, it looks good, would you guys be prepared to bring forward that mandate for Alberta's choice?
Well, first off, to be clear, I'm not the elected official, and I can't speak for the premier or the caucus on that. But I mean, obviously, if if there was a referendum and a clear majority wanted Alberta to pursue a different path, their elected officials would obviously have to look at that and would have to, if it was clearly demonstrated, obviously they represent the people. And so, obviously that's a decision for them. But I think they'll tell you, as well as I'll tell you, that, we try to not deal in hypotheticals. We try to deal with facts on the ground. And, right now, as Mitch said earlier, there's a petition. There'll be signatures gathered. Those signatures, of course, will then have to be counted and verified. And if at the end of that, we have enough signatures that have been collected by this group, if that's confirmed, then it's clear, the legislation's clear that a question will be put to the people on it, and from there, let's see. We'd have to see where it went.
Okay, that's a fair answer. The job is now up to the people to go ahead and get that referendum on the table and then voted for, and we'll see where we're at. By the way, that was the same answer Premier Smith gave me, is come hit me up when we're at that stage, because we'll talk about it then. All right, last one, well, I got a couple more minutes with you, is the recalls that are going around. What are your thoughts, and what is caucus's thoughts about the recall? You guys stand firm? You guys kind of worried? What are your thoughts about these recalls that are going around?
You know what? Typical left-wing activists on this one, using a process that's meant to be used very sparingly, only when a politician is, clearly demonstrated some sort of breach of trust, public trust, or, criminal or quasi-criminal activity. When they're supposed, that's when that is what recall is used for in other jurisdictions. It's not common. It's quite rare. But of course, the left wing just can't help themselves. So they want to make we're going to have, who knows, maybe we'll have all 40, however many UCP MLAs under some sort of recall petition. Our caucus, from my feeling and talking with many of them, is just kind of steady as she goes. I mean, we're confident in the record of the government. They're very confident in the record of the government. Alberta is the strongest economic province in the country. It's not really close. We have demonstrated that we're protecting people's freedoms. We're demonstrating that we protect children, that we're allowing people to protect their homes, and not seizing their private property and their firearms through this ridiculous program that the federal government has instituted. We put our record up against the NDP anytime, any place, anywhere. So I think it's kind of a bit of a bring it on. Like we have nothing but pride in the work that we've done, and they can fill their boots and try to get the signatures, but we think Albertans are with us, and we'll just let it play out.
Excellent. And when it fails, and I suspect they all will fail, hopefully there'll be some changes to the Recall Act so that it's kind of tightened, so that you can't just go after policies you don't like. You actually have to have an integrity issue or something wrong with the person. Maybe. We'll see where we're at after this is all done. But Rob, thank you very much for your time. I know you got to hit that next meeting, so sorry for making it a little bit late. And we'll have you back on again sometime in the future. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks, Paula. Take care.
Take care.
Take care. All right, so that was a lot of fun. Mitch is going to be trying to reconnect, so we may as well take this opportunity to say goodbye. Any comments quickly that we can address? I know it was flying across the screen there.
But actually, no, you touched upon those questions. So the two main questions that came out regarding why they so gung-ho about carbon capture, what is their information on it? It turns out they don't have the information on it. They're going to third parties to provide it to them to be the experts. And then you touched upon the recall, like, do they have any concerns about it? He says no, but the interesting thing he did say, left-wing activism, and then there's a very good comment here. Where is it from Walking Campbell's Cat? The left wing is who you signed your MOU with. So
no, and look, some of the terms I wasn't a fan of was it's a cost of doing business and stuff like that, but he's not wrong. Like, if you're in a business world and you got to go with the law of the lands, and it's not like we can just ignore everything. The Sovereignty Act, the Sovereign Alberta within the United Canada Act, tries to establish the boundaries, but there still are some. But I think Mitch did a good job of highlighting, like, look, if we were out of those regulations, we're not part of that. That whole overhead of slowing us down and costing us more would be gone.
And there was a comment earlier in the chat saying he's avoiding saying carbon tax for the consumers. That's what it does boil down to.
He did admit, though, that it does bubble up.
It does.
It's a hidden
tax. Of course it does. And it's
hard to not admit that.
And it was a very good point brought up by Mitch, saying, well, if we're giving them all these credits, then that's still the Albertan taxpayer who's paying for these credits for these, for this industry. So it's still coming out of our pocket in one way, shape, or form. So thank you very much, everyone, for being in the chat and contributing and having you saying, keeping it clean. I'll admit that. But no, thank you very much. And like I said, we're going to go ahead and switch over to our locals, and hopefully Mitch can join us. But in the meantime, go ahead and like, subscribe, and share, please. And thank you. Go to the Levine Show to become a member through locals. And then if you want, you can also become a supporter and join us in the extended chat that's about to occur right now.
Absolutely. And thank you very much to our audience. It's our audience that helps get out there so that we can go ahead and get guests on like this. So it's worth their time. It's worth their while. And over the years, we built up a platform where, we're getting the premier, her chief of staff, the president of the UCP, Mitch Sylvester, and others on the show to talk to you directly. So thank you very much for that as well. Make sure you share and get this out there. That does help grow the channel. And I'm working on Liz Truss. So Honorable Liz Truss again this morning.
Another side conversation there. But anyway, everyone, hope you have a fantastic weekend. Stay warm, and we look forward to seeing you on Monday morning.
Have a great day. And if on our locals, hang out. Mitch is trying to come back. I can see that right now. So we'll talk to you soon. Love you all, and God bless.